Hello, I'm Penny Thornton and I'm talking astrology. On this video, I'm talking about Jupiter in Cancer, and not just all the general meanings to it, but sign by sign, how it looks, what you can expect depending on your sun sign. But first, let's get into what this all means. Why do we get all excited about the minute a planet enters a new sign? And specifically Jupiter. Why is, Jupiter in Cancer so special? Well, there are two reasons, and one of them is because what's going on elsewhere in the zodiac, so to speak, in the solar system. Jupiter is going to be making some very important connections to other planets, and it's the setting that always matters. That's what makes one Jupiter in Cancer different from any other Jupiter in Cancer, because you've got all the other planets in different places. So I'll get to that shortly. What I'll say first of all is when exactly Jupiter enters Cancer, and it enters on the 9th of June at, got a note here, 21, I can't even see my own writing here, at 21:03 UTC, and it exits on the 30th of June 2026. So it has a little over a year in this particular zodiac sign. Now, the last time Jupiter was in Cancer was in 2013, 2014. That's roughly speaking June 2013 to June 2014. And that was a particularly important time, and I'm going to come on to that shortly and talk about what happened then and the other Jupiter in Cancer years, because they have a relevance to this one. But of course, if you were born with Jupiter in Cancer, then you're having a Jupiter return. And that really is rather more important than just simply having Jupiter moving through an area of your horoscope. Jupiter spends a year in each sign, and that means that it changes sign every year, or thereabouts. It takes 12 years to move around the sun, and therefore 12 years to move around the zodiac. And it isn't exact, though. For the last few years, it has tended to move into a new sign in and around the June period. But, over the years, of course, it's different months and different dates all the time. And we get kind of excited about Jupiter because it is our good news planet. It is the one planet we look to bring joy. I mean, the very word jovial comes from Jupiter, Jove, and its principle of expansion and growth are things that we like to have happen in our lives. We want situations that we love and enjoy. We want growth. We want success. We want abundance in our life. But there is another word for Jupiter that is less wonderful, and that is inflation. And we know what happens when we get inflation in terms of the economy, and things spiral out of control and are much more expensive. And, the inflation of problems is another thing that Jupiter can do. So it isn't all good, as is anything in astrology. There isn't one thing that's always all good and something else that's always all bad. It isn't like that. There are extremes. Every single planet, every single aspect, everything in astrology has a positive and negative function. And it's very important to remember that, because let's say you're listening here and you think, oh, this is going to be great. I've got Jupiter coming into my sign. Yet at the same time, you've got a rapidly escalating situation. That could be something to be aware of, and to say, you know what? This is a time to cut my losses rather than to get something increasing to a point where it is completely out of control. But let's get back to the idea that Jupiter is good news. In mythology, of course, Jupiter, Roman Jupiter, Greek Zeus, was the king of the gods, and he had thunderbolts that when he got annoyed about life and mortals, he would hurl those thunderbolts about and create rather a lot of destruction. So we need to look at that side of it as well. But on the other hand, when the sun shone and Jupiter was in a good mood, everything flourished. So we do need to, think about that kind of process, if you like, in terms of what's going on in our own lives, especially if Jupiter is going to be conjoining or opposing or squaring your planets, or indeed you're having a Jupiter return. Which sort of brings me to a rather important point. And I know it might seem a little controversial, especially to those of you who are perhaps students in astrology, haven't been doing it for decades, or those of you who are just interested in sun sign astrology. And that is that the signs really are far less important in astrology. The things that are more important are the aspects a planet will make to other planets, and also the position they're in terms of the diurnal circle. In other words, what house they're in. And that's what I'm going to be looking at when we get round to looking at it from all 12 signs, is really the area of your horoscope in which Jupiter is passing, that's going to show you the increase, the potential for growth, the potential for good things to happen, but also the potential for things to escalate, get out of control, and be a little bit too hot to handle. I mean, you can have too much of a good thing when it comes to Jupiter. It is said Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. Now, this means that Jupiter works well in the sign of Cancer. It has an affinity with the sign. But it's kind of strange when you think about this, because, of course, all the exaltations, falls, rulerships of the planets, they were created at a time when we didn't know that Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto existed. And there was a time when Jupiter ruled Pisces, which of course is a water sign, which is the reason why it is exalted in its fellow water sign of Cancer. But really, Jupiter is a very fiery energy. When you think about, again, Jupiter, the king of the gods, Zeus, this is a fiery energy. This isn't something to do with gentleness and nurture and all of that, which is very Cancerian. It's quite the opposite. So in some ways, Jupiter in Cancer is a little bit of an anomaly. But what's rather important on this occasion is that as Jupiter enters Cancer, it's going to be angling Saturn and Neptune, which have just recently entered Aries. So Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, these are the cardinal points in the zodiac circle, in the horoscopic circle. And the 0 to 1 degrees are really the power points of the horoscopic circle, of the zodiacal circle. They have more power in terms of the expression of any particular planet or astrological event happening on 0 to 1, maybe even stretch it a bit to 2 degrees of the cardinal signs. So this is why, in a way, we're giving this entry of Jupiter into Cancer slightly more importance and significance. And in fact, in the very week that Jupiter goes into Cancer, 9th of June, there is an awful lot going on astrologically. We have Mars squaring Uranus, Venus squaring Pluto, Jupiter squaring Saturn. We've got Mercury squaring Neptune and Saturn as well. So it's a very intense kind of week. And I think it goes without saying that we're going to see a lot going on in terms of different parts of the world when we get to that June period. And it is significant for the world, and even events that happen, and you may think about them and think, well, why is that important? Well, it will turn out to be very important. You don't have things happening at these cardinal points and they're not to be some very powerful consequences in terms of the globe, in terms of humanity. When we think about Jupiter in the sign of Cancer, what do we know about Cancer? We know it's a sign of motherhood. We know it's a sign of children. We know it's a sign of a nurture. to do anything to do with the home, anything which of course also by association is the homeland. So when we think about Jupiter moving through Cancer, we think about things like, because Jupiter is the principle of expansion and growth, we think about housing, growth in housing. We think about the population growing. And of course, there are a lot of countries concerned about the population, which is shrinking. So the idea that Jupiter in Cancer would grow the population would be a very good thing. And we think too about hospitality, things to do with the big hospitality industry. Then that looks as though that too will have a growth spurt. But again, as I'm saying, it isn't just the sign of Cancer that's really important. It's really where Jupiter is going to connect to other planets that we really, really want to focus on. We can also look back in time and think about what happened the last time Jupiter was in Cancer. Can we take anything away from that? Well, again, the reason why Jupiter in Cancer last time, 2013 to 2014, June 2013 to June 2014, the reason why there will only be some similarities is that during that time, Jupiter was in fact often squaring Uranus. And in fact, one of the things I noticed as I looked through events in history in that period of time were just how many explosions there were. I mean, it was almost every month there was an explosion, an earthquake, there was something going on. But again, we're looking at the Uranus factor. When we go back a previous 12 years to the time that Jupiter was in Cancer before that, we're looking at June 2001 to about June, July 2002. And of course, the outstanding event in that period of time really was 9/11, the attack on the Twin Towers and the beginning of the war on terror. So there are some significant things that might possibly be very relevant when it comes to looking at what Jupiter in Cancer means for us this time round. And also, I have mentioned the idea that, if you were born with Jupiter in Cancer, you're going to be having your Jupiter return. And so here on the screen are the years that Jupiter was in Cancer, so that if you don't know your natal chart, you will at least have some idea whether or why this year is significant. Now, a Jupiter return boosts your natal Jupiter. So wherever Jupiter is in your chart, the aspects it's forming to other planets, you get a kind of reboot, a triggering of the same thing. So you can go back every 12 years and see if there are parallel experiences that you can really relate to the position of Jupiter in your own natal chart. The other thing to remember that Jupiter will only return to its natal position for about 3 or 4 days, maybe a week at the most. And during that week, that idea of a reboot of all those Jupiterian qualities within you and within your natal chart get this terrific boost. And when we think about Jupiter, this is where we want to achieve things, where we experience success, where abundance operates in our lives, where we feel lucky, where we want to do well. So when Jupiter returns to its position again, we get that kind of sense of, oh, I've got to do it now. Or you may find that events conspire and you are in a very fortunate period. Now, in the same way, we look at Jupiter moving through Cancer for the next year. It doesn't mean that every single day of the next 12 months is just going to be great. Jupiter is just going to be bestowing all this wonderful stuff on us all every single day. It's not like that. It's only when Jupiter connects with a point in your natal chart that you get the Jupiter effect. So 2 to 3 days, there might be a super event, something very special happening in your life. something very fortunate, something that makes you feel, wow, this is great to be alive. But it isn't going to be that experience for the whole, 12 months. It's just when it makes a connection. And it's the same, really, when we look at what Jupiter is doing day by day in terms of what's going on in the world. If you're forecasting for sign by sign, whatever you may be doing as an astrologer, it's only when Jupiter makes a connection with another planet also moving around the sun that you get something that gives the essence of what this Jupiter in Cancer cycle is all about. And it's not just, let's say, Jupiter trine the sun, or Jupiter trine Mars, or Jupiter sextile Saturn. We're not talking about these aspects. We're talking about the more dynamic ones. We're talking about Jupiter opposition something. We're talking about Jupiter square something, Jupiter conjoined to something. Then you're going to experience something that is in your face. You'll know Jupiter has arrived. And again, coming back to what's happening in the week of June the 9th and the days into the following week, Jupiter is not just arriving in Cancer without making any connections anywhere. No, it's going to connect first with Saturn and then with Neptune, which is why we can look forward to, or maybe prepared for, is a better word, for things to be going whoosh at this particular time. I think it's really easier to just go back 12 years to see, the main events that have a kind of Jupiter character to them that may have relevance this time around. Because, if we keep going back year by year, I'll be here for the next hour and a half. I don't really want to do that. But I did find it particularly interesting when I looked through that in that period when Jupiter was in Cancer 12 years ago, Russia annexed Crimea. And I think that's a really significant event, because I am really expecting some kickback or some resonance with the whole Russia-Ukraine situation as Jupiter moves through Cancer. We also had 2 new kings the last time Jupiter was in Cancer. And this is because the old king, so to speak, abdicated and sons came to the throne. So we were looking at the King of Belgium and the King of Spain. Now, we also had some pretty dramatic weather, and we had one of the biggest typhoons. I think it was called Typhoon Haiyan. Anyway, it struck the Philippines and Vietnam and killed over 6,000 people. So it was massive. And I do think there's something about Jupiter, especially Jupiter in a water sign, and also because we've got Jupiter angling Neptune, that we can expect more water-related events, big stuff going on with water, whether we're talking about flooding, whether we're talking about typhoons, whether we're talking about dams bursting, whether we're talking about other, sea quakes is another thing. Of course, that's more related to the Jupiter-Neptune cycle again, but we've got that going for us this time as well. So I think those things are significant. There was also the Ebola epidemic, and as you go back through history, there are a lot of waterborne diseases and diseases like that that seem to be consistent with Jupiter in a water sign, particularly in Cancer. So those are really things we need to watch out for. Also in 2013-14, we had the war in Gaza again, so a different war, but not this one. But it's interesting how we get resonances from these particular times. And so I think what I want to do is come to this current time and why there is a direct relationship with 1989 and 2025, 2026. And that is the reason, this is something that I think we can, well, it supports what my belief is, that we are going to see regime change in Russia. We are going to see things happening in Russia that change the political dynamic there. And of course, that will have a kind of knock-on effect elsewhere. And the reason I say this is not just that the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is something that occurs with, when you look through the history of Russia, it has a very big part to play, and I'll be talking about this on a separate video. But when we think about the Jupiter-Neptune combination, Jupiter in Cancer, on November the 9th, 1989, when the Berlin Wall came down, Jupiter was exactly opposite, Jupiter in Cancer was exactly opposite the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Capricorn. And of course, what happened in the wake of the fall of Berlin, which meant East and West were united, was the whole dissolution of the Soviet Union. So here we have this returning, really, Jupiter in Cancer squaring Saturn and Neptune. And on the cardinal points, we have to know that something is going on in Russia. Something is going to take place at this time. That even if we don't have dramatic scenes, let's say, of the overthrow of the regime, maybe we won't get it that dramatic, but there will be things going on at this time. While Jupiter is on the cardinal points, Neptune and Saturn are on the cardinal points, Aries, we are going to be seeing the beginnings of a mighty big shakeup. And we don't always get all the news that's happening in Russia, but it must be beginning to get through to the people of Russia what's really going on with Ukraine and what's happening to their young people who are being sent to the war front. And it's ripe for a people's march on the government, so to speak, or however that comes about. So we're going to see the seeds of that, I think, fairly shortly, but it may still take time to manifest completely. Well, in a way, just as the Jupiter opposition, Saturn and Neptune, back in 1989, November, it took another 2 years before the Soviet Union collapsed. But that was the beginning. That's when it all started to crumble. And I think that we've got a kind of parallel situation going on at this point in time. Another country for whom Jupiter in Cancer is supremely important is America, because America was born in 1776, 4th of July, with the sun in Cancer. But it wasn't just the sun in Cancer, the sun was conjunct Jupiter. So America will be having its Jupiter return. Now, of course, back in 2001, we had 9/11 on this Jupiter return. And I'm not saying that we're going to have a repeat of anything like that. That's not what I'm saying here. But what I am saying is that there will be resonances with that period of time. And given that what's happening to America at this point in time is that there's a lot of change in its relations with other countries in the world. And of course, Jupiter in the chart of America is in the 7th house of other countries, its partners, its relationships with other countries. So there is a reset going on. And of course, we're already seeing that happen. That's already something in motion. But clearly, when Jupiter gets to that point, which it will do by the end of June into July, and of course, we've got the Sun-Jupiter conjunction towards the end of June as well, we are going to be in a climate in which relations, America's relations with other countries, is going to be at a pivotal time. And it would be good to think that Jupiter, being the benign planet that we want it to be, could kind of, reset things in a way where there is a lot more hope for how other countries in America will interact. It doesn't look like it at this point because America is going through a very protectionist kind of period. The administration is into protectionism, not really being, not in its role as being the parents, so to speak, of the rest of the Western world. But we'll have to wait and see. Will Jupiter blow this up and make things much more kind of divisive with other countries, or could it be this kind of reset for the better? We'll have to wait and see, but do not let us forget that we have some examples of what happens when Jupiter returns to its original position in the seventh house. We have a very good example of 9/11, when the jihadist movement finally made its move on America and said, we're going to get back. We're going to get back on you. So we can't rule out other kinds of aggressive behavior, whether they come in the form of tariffs and trade wars, or wars of words, or all of that. I mean, it doesn't have to be, in armed conflict. It can be in other ways. But I certainly think we're going to see that with America. And in fact, what makes this even more important is that America's MC-IC axis, the midheaven is 1 degree of Libra, the IC is 1 degree of Aries, so Saturn and Neptune are right on the IC. So we've got Jupiter squaring the IC of America. So, the last time we looked at something like this, we go back to the Civil War of 1865 or whatever it was. And the idea of a civil war was very different then from the way it is now. But we can certainly see that the administration is taking has a war on the judiciary on its hands, as well as a war on government departments. So we're already seeing that in play. And this is going to change America fundamentally. Even if a shot isn't fired, as it was in the Civil War, what we're seeing going on in the courts and in universities and in the structure of things with the economy, with tariffs. I mean, if this isn't a kind of different kind of war, then I don't know what is. So we have that Jupiter-Neptune, Saturn vibe going on as we speak, really. Jupiter may not be in Cancer just yet, but it will be within a day or so of this video going live. So we will be able to see or recognize more clearly what's going on in the United States. And of course, what happens in the United States, doesn't stay there. Okay. No, I think it's time I started to look at Jupiter in Cancer through the houses in terms of the signs of the zodiac. And for those of you who are new to my channel, used to the way I do things, I would love it if you liked or subscribed to the channel, helps it grow. It's from the perspective of your sun sign, which you probably know. You were born in March the 3rd, therefore you're a Pisces, sun Pisces. You're born on the 21st of December, you're a sun Capricorn. But we also need to look at it from the perspective of what the rising sign is as well. So if you're born with Capricorn rising, Jupiter will be moving into your 7th house, the same as it would be if you were a sun Capricorn. So it's quite important to know what your rising sign is, the degree of your rising sign, because then you'll be able to know exactly where this Jupiter transit is taking place. But there is something to be said for this general view, the sun sign perspective of where Jupiter is. I find that enormously valid, just as much as I do when I think about the characteristics of the zodiac signs, whether you're an Aries or a Taurus, whatever you may be. That branding, that identity with the sign is very much like being a member of a nation, having a nationality. You share certain traits with everyone else born in that country or born under that sign, except you are a unique individual with a whole unique pattern to yourself. And so in a way, we can look at if to the whole of the sun sign group of Aries, what does it mean to have Jupiter in Cancer, Jupiter in the 4th house? This is what the general meaning is. That's still relevant. Slightly more relevant is going to be your rising sign and where Jupiter is in your natal chart. So let's begin, and let's begin with the first sign of the zodiac. Let's start with Cancer, because Cancer, it is you who are about to have Jupiter enter your sign. And a lot of the things that I've said in terms of, it's not going to be every day of the next 12 months that you're going to wake up and say, boy, am I the luckiest person in the world. But there will be times when there are breakthroughs, celebrations, growth, and good things happening. And there's another thing that we need to remember Jupiter for, and that is its protection. Jupiter is known as the great protector as well. And it kind of cushions you from a lot of other things. So things might have been a lot worse were Jupiter not to have been in a particular position. So that is certainly something to take away from Jupiter's transit of your first house of your sign. So whether Jupiter is in your first house or whether you are a Cancerian, this is the most personal area of the horoscope. It is about you as an individual, who you are. It is about your appearance. It is about how you come across to other people, how other people see you. So Jupiter in your first house could mean people see you more. You are more in their face. So we can look at this across the spectrum, whether this means you're going to have a higher profile. Maybe you're going to be super successful and people will take notice of you more. Maybe you will be growing as a person. So as you grow as a person, you have more influence. But of course, you can grow literally as well, whether you grow because you're having a baby, which is a wonderful thing, or whether you grow because you had a bit too much of the good life with Jupiter. And that is something to be aware of. And I think you radiate when something is going through your first house, you kind of radiate that planetary property or properties. So positivity, optimism, a sense of goodwill. These are things that you personally will be spreading and exhibiting. And when we feel good about ourselves, or when we feel good about life, I mean, does life ever seem to get better and better? Yes, it does. And in a way, we could look at this as a wave, a sine wave, so that you get peaks and troughs, and that you're now at one of your peaks, so that a lot of things come together while Jupiter is moving through your first house, moving through your sign. But you also have to be careful not to get too big for your boots, not to fly too near to the sun. And, it's a fine line, isn't it? To be confident about oneself and to be confident enough to make waves without crossing into narcissism or into being a bully or being into so self-absorbed you don't care really pretty much about anyone else. So always you need to check that ability to make things happen, that ability to enjoy your success, that ability to find joy in life, it doesn't cross a boundary and become difficult for other people to accept because of, it's too much. But enough, perfectly enough, is great. So, Cancer, make the most use of this next 12 months. If you're listening to me now and you're thinking, I always wanted to travel, I always wanted to do this, don't wait. Yeah, the world is not in a perfect place. And we can look at aspects and eclipses, we can look at them all and think, oh no, this is all too much. I don't think I'm going to do it. There's just too much astrology that doesn't sound too good to me. Well, we have to work with what we've got. And if we're constantly setting aside things we really, really want to have happen or things we really want to do, then we're going to end up at a point in our lives when they're no longer available to them, to us. We can't do them. So my advice to you would be to grab every opportunity, to seize the moment when it's there, to recognize when you've got a moment and to go for it. Whether this is about a relationship, love, whether it's about a job, whether it's about having a baby, whether it's about moving somewhere, do it while Jupiter is in your sign, because although you're going to have the maximum effect when Jupiter is on your sun or on Mercury or making other connections in your natal chart, certainly as a piece, just simply having Jupiter in your sign still makes it a very fertile period, and you want to make the most of that. That's not going to happen again for 12 years, so make the most of it. What that Jupiter-Neptune-Saturn connection will do very much depends. But if you are born around the 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd of June, or you have planets and points at 1 to 3 degrees of Cancer, Capricorn, Aries, or Libra, then you are going to gain the benefits of this combination, which may be an absolutely extraordinary moment in which things come together and make you feel blessed, even that somehow you've been extremely fortunate. Or what you find is the opposite of that, and things have just got too much for you to handle, and that there must therefore be a breakdown of certain things. It's going to be that extreme, but as I said, that is particularly if you are bouncing off on those degree areas. But yes, make the most of this time, Cancer, okay? Once every 12 years. Now, if we come to Leo, Jupiter is entering your 12th house on the 9th of June. And that is it's the preceding sign to your own sign. And that equates to the 12th house of the solar chart. Or if you've got Leo rising, then, Jupiter will be entering the 12th house. And the 12th house is an area where a lot of preparation is done. And you could just simply look at these next 12 months and think, okay, I'm going to be sowing the seeds of a lot of things that I want to take off in the years to come, not necessarily just from mid-2026 to mid-2027, but beyond that time. And of course, the longer and the more time you take to plant seeds and make sure they're in fertile soil, the more likely it is when Jupiter enters your sign next year that things will take off very quickly. Now, it may seem as though your luck has deserted you occasionally during these next 12 months. Why aren't I getting, the feedback I usually get? Why aren't I having the luck that, I should have, or the opportunities or the success that I deserve? Well, it's for this very reason. You've got Jupiter in this underground position, which is saying, just a minute, it's not time. The time will be, once Jupiter has come out from under the 12th house and gone into your own sign and beyond. Things just aren't ready. Now, I'm not saying you won't be at all successful in these next 12 months with anything. No, of course I'm not. Especially as Jupiter could be anywhere in your natal chart. But the things perhaps that you care most about, I think, the things that require time and effort, then it's the time and the effort that you take now that is going to guarantee them in the future rather than this minute. The other thing about this 12th house is that it is a very, it's the area of the unconscious mind. And I do talk about this a lot when I have the opportunity, in that everything begins in the unconscious mind, a spark. That's where things take root, an idea, and it grows from there into reality. So the things that come to you in terms of ideas, feelings, possibilities, even visions, moments of psychic lucidity, these are signs of the future and need to be attended to, whether they're signs of great and good things and things that make you happy, or whether they're not. Your subconscious, your unconscious mind will be super connected or active. And of course, you can get in touch with that in terms of dreams, analyzing your dreams, thinking about what that dream meant, or paying a lot more attention to coincidences, to your intuition that is telling you something. Don't ignore it, look into it, because this really is the power source of life, this 12th house. Everything starts from that pool of the unconscious mind, the 12th house. Everything begins there. So anything from a great opportunity to something coming into your life that's going to change it for the better, to warnings that maybe something is going wrong, these need to be attended to, even if you would normally dismiss them. While Jupiter is in your 12th house, you need to be more vigilant about that. And I think too, because there is a sense of the health of mind, body, and spirit about the 12th house, that you could just look at Jupiter's transit of the 12th house and say, your constitution will be great, and that you'll be strong and robust mentally, physically, emotionally. But there's also a case to be made for this is a time when you should be strengthening it. You should be actively looking to get fitter, better, stronger, mentally, spiritually, physically, however you want to think of that. And that the next 12 months spent being diligent about this are going to be really important and useful and good. And in a few instances, there may be real moments of illumination. It's almost like your Damascus moment. And you can't look out for that or plan it. It's just going to happen, but it's probably going to happen on a Jupiter aspect. But this is something to look forward to. I like the word Damascus moment because it ties us to religion. Whereas if we just say epiphany, it's a little bit weaker. So a Damascus moment is something that is like, wow, I've seen the light. Right. And I think that's offered to you during this period that Jupiter is through Cancer. And, Leo, if you look back, if you go back to 2013 and say to yourself, well, did any of this happen in 2013, 2014? No, I don't think so. Well, of course, it's a long time to think back to, remember all the things that happened at that time. But what's happening here is I'm talking to you and bringing out things for you to be aware of, so that consciously you are engaging with a process and therefore helping it to manifest. So I think that's really important. Okay, Leo? So Virgo, Jupiter for you is moving into the 11th house. And when we think about the 11th house, a lot of people get stuck on the 11th house and they think, oh, it's about friendship and it's about it's about groups. Well, we don't get much from that, do we? There's a whole other set of meanings to this 11th house. The first thing we need to take away from it is the idea that it follows the 10th house. And the 10th house, of course, is our material world. It's about what we do in life, our place on the world stage, so to speak, what we do for a living, how public we are. So when we get planets moving into the 11th house, or the 11th house per se, what is its meaning? It is about, so what does all that mean? What are we getting from our job? What are we getting from our place out in the world there? What meaning is to be derived from it? What value? Am I being fulfilled by all of this? So the 11th house is to a large extent about fulfillment as well. And looking to find avenues in which you find fulfillment. And with Jupiter coming in here, is a real opportunity to find gold. What is it that you've been looking for a very, very long period? And it's about collaboration. And of course, we do things on our own and we are responsible for ourselves. And a lot of us are very creative and we create our things in the silence of our own world. But when we get together with people, things are often much better. We get more out of what we're doing. The end result is better. And the whole idea of a team effort is really a wonderful thing. And we learn about teamwork in the 11th house. And with Jupiter coming into the 11th house, it's like the benefits of teamwork. So you may find that all sorts of groups you belong to, or the teams that you work with at work, you're going to experience some success here. And I also think this is about kinship and kindred spirits, that we can find a kindred spirit. We can find places, groups, occupations, practices, and activities that make us feel as though we found other members of our tribe. We've got that. How good is that? So Jupiter, as always, the principle of growth applies to anything to do with collaborations. And I think even in one-on-one relationships, whether we're looking at business partnerships or whether we're looking at marriages, however we put two people together who love each other or must work together, the minute you get the message, we've got a goal, and if we work as a team, we'll meet that goal, or we've certainly got a better chance of getting that goal. So this idea should be sort of constant during the next 12 months, Virgo. This idea that not just the more the merrier, but it's more this idea of working as a team, being on Team Virgo means that you'll get the result that you're looking for. So potentially some very good things. And when we look at Jupiter squaring Neptune and Saturn at the moment, it would be interesting to see if around this time you don't get offered some kind of opportunity to join a group or an enterprise or form a collaboration, or whether something related to an existing collaboration has something really, really important happen to it, especially financially, because Neptune and Saturn are in one of the financial areas of the horoscope. And in fact, this might be a bit of a story, another story about Jupiter's passage through the 11th house, which is to do with financial benefits of collaborations or the financial disbenefits of collaborations. Libra. Well, of course, Cancer is your fellow cardinal sign. And when you've got Jupiter arriving in Cancer, as far as your solar chart is concerned, Jupiter is entering your 10th house. Or if you have Libra rising, then Jupiter is going to enter your 10th house. Well, at some point it will. Obviously, if you've got 1 degree of Libra rising as an ascendant, then Jupiter is going to be in your 10th house immediately. Whereas if you've got 26 or 27 degrees of Libra rising, well, Jupiter will still be in the 9th house for rather a large part of these next 12 months. So, you've got to, if you're looking at ascending signs, you're going to need to know the degree area. But just as a principle, just at the general idea that Jupiter has arrived in this dominant point of your horoscope, and even we could look at the end of the 9th house and the early part, well, actually, the whole through the 10th house, we look at this as to have something to do with a pinnacle in life. You're at a high point, and these next 12 months does represent opportunities to rise to the top. Now, you may know exactly what that means because you are hoping to get a particular job, a position of power. You are hoping to do well in your career, and your efforts are geared to that. Whereas for some of you Librans, well, either you don't have a career or you're retired. So this would appear to have nothing to do with you. But of course it does, because the 10th house is about what we're doing out in the world. And what we want to achieve, really, are aspirations. And you can have aspirations at any age. Doesn't matter whether you're 17, 7, or 87. You've got aspirations of some description, and that's what Jupiter is beginning to affect. And we think about Jupiter and its properties of increase. We think about a very, very fortunate period of life. Your material world growing, things being bigger and better for you. In some instances, fame, celebrity, recognition for your talents, your years of work, whatever is applicable. It's Jupiter at this point through the 10th house that tends to happen. But let's not forget Jupiter and inflation and the escalation of difficulties. That don't be surprised if a situation that's already being very difficult, and let's say it's you with someone who is technically an authority figure, someone who you have to look up to and do their bidding. If you are already experiencing a dynamic with that person or that company or that group, whatever it is, then Jupiter might actually inflate that and make it worse. So my advice about this is to really deal with it head on. It's no point just crossing your fingers and toes and hoping any kind of conflict is going to go away. What you've got to do is address it. Because even if you decide, oh, I'm going to leave and so I'm going to walk away from this problem, you're going to meet it somewhere else, because you've not dealt with it. So I think sometimes we meet a lot of narcissists at work or in the work environment where we've got Jupiter in the 10th, and it's knowing how to deal with a narcissist. And of course, a narcissist is often a bully. And so we need to stand up to bullies. So that may be a key to having a very successful year ahead in terms of June to June by standing up to people who are pushing you around, who are taking advantage of you. I mean, Jupiter in this position is saying, rise to your full power. Don't let this period go by and apologize or compromise or not want to make waves, because this is your time to make waves. This is your time to be in your power. And I think if you remind yourself about this from time to time, this will become an era of opportunity for you. And yes, of course, you may find that the universe does deliver. And you do get a fabulous job. You do get something wonderful happening to you, people wanting you to join them or being in the public eye, whatever it may be. That may happen spontaneously. But the reason I'm here really is to say to you, this is your time. Make the most of it. And if you think back 10 years, 12 years to 2012, 2013, or was it, no, sorry, 2013 to 2014, do you think you may have missed an opportunity? Think back, go back over things and think, could I have done that differently? Because you want to make the most of Jupiter in your 10th house while you've got this, I don't like this word energy, but sometimes it's the only word to use, while you've got this very powerful energy there that will, take you where you want to go. And actually, speaking about taking you where you want to go, you may do quite a lot of travel during this next 12 months, and not just travel in the sense of, moving up and down, through the next or the local 50-mile radius, but really quite some distance, a distance of hundreds, if not thousands of miles. And the other thing I think that may be significant and may help you with decision making is that there may be more work or more opportunities linked to other countries or to other cultures. And that may also play into making the most of life. And I mean, even in these difficult times, and they are very difficult, there are going to be opportunities and there are moments when we feel blessed. And you'll probably find more of them while Jupiter is in this area. The Jupiter squaring Saturn-Neptune is interesting because the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in terms of your solar chart is happening in the area of relationships. So it's either saying someone has spotted you, someone or a company or whatever it is has said, we want you to do well. Or it may be nothing to do with that side of life. It may be to do with somebody adoring you and wanting to be with you. So this could also be a period in which some very powerful unions are born. But as always with Neptune, you've got to look for the reality. You can't just take the spin or take the superficial appearance of things. You have to know it's true. But if it's true, my goodness, this is opportunity in a bottle. Scorpio. Scorpio, Jupiter is moving into your fellow fire sign, fellow water sign, Cancer. And that means it's in the fire house of the ninth house. That's Sagittarius's territory. I really love the ninth house. And I think I say this every time I talk about it. It is where we see beyond. It takes us out of ourselves. It takes us out of our comfort zone. It opens the world up to us. And Jupiter is the natural ruler of the ninth house. So this may be the beginning of a period where you travel extensively, or you have a lot of contact with people from overseas or different cultures or different creeds. And I mean, Jupiter has a spiritual side to it, a religious side to it as well. So this may be a period of time in which your religious bias becomes more acute. You're more aware of it. You're more aware of the purpose of religion in your life, or more aware of the spiritual world, that of course is part of life, and a desire to follow or get on your spiritual path. And there's a lot of talk about this, of course, at the moment, and I think this is a bit of the opposite to the world being in such a crazy state, that people are seeking a spiritual salve and exploring ways to make sense of what's going on spiritually. And I think with Jupiter in the ninth house and the relationship with you as a Scorpio does say that this is a good route for you, to explore your spirituality, to find groups, themes, whatever it may be. I mean, I don't want to get at the idea of cults at all, but just ways in which you can pursue your spiritual journey. Maybe we can just leave it at that. Then Jupiter offers great experiences here. That may also open up the doors of academia to you. Maybe you're going to university and you already know that, in which case Jupiter will be doing its thing during that time. But maybe you're not thinking of going to university, but yet you are tempted by the idea of acquiring more knowledge or more experience. Then this is a wonderful opportunity for you to do just that. And with Jupiter being such a kind of, it's a kind of explorative planet. You cover ground with Jupiter, you cover the world with Jupiter, that learning a new language, for instance, discovering what's going on in other cultures and countries, could be a very rewarding part of life. And of course, the more languages we can speak, whether you're applying for a job or you want to travel, the easier all will be. So the big message of Jupiter in the ninth house here, the Jupiter passage through Cancer, is about expanding your world in literal and metaphorical terms, in all manner of ways. And some of you who are perhaps looking to get qualifications, you probably will find you achieve them while Jupiter is in your ninth house. You get you get your BA or your your MA, whatever it is, during this particular time period. And I think too, this idea of looking forward in life, not just to next year or the year after, but 10, 20 years down the line, where do you want to be? What vision do you have for yourself 20 years down the line when you've retired, maybe, or however that 20 years or 30 years is expressed? And Jupiter's passage through this area will help you build it, because the sooner you get on with making the reality of that, getting nearer the reality, the better. And Jupiter will help you do just that. It's a very nice passage for you. And even the very beginning of it, with Jupiter squaring Saturn and Neptune, which may coincide with some disappointment of some description. That disappointment is meaningful because it's going to send you on a new track. And that's the track you should be on. There's always something good about this Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune setup. If we look at what I was talking about earlier on in the video, this idea of the Berlin Wall coming down, and what did that do? That broke up the Soviet Union. There was freedom. There were all sorts of things changed, but it wasn't easy, and there was conflict even within that. And I think if you have that idea with what's going on at the moment, particularly with your hopes and dreams and visions and aspirations, and indeed, in some cases, the hard work you're doing to bring about your growth and success, if there is a disappointment or it seems as though it's too much for you to manage at this point, what happens in the breakdown of that will be something else will come through, and that is the right thing. Okay. Sagittarius. Now, for you, Jupiter is moving into the 8th house. It has been in the 7th solar house for the past year, since June of last year. And hopefully you'll be looking back on that year and thinking, it was a good year. I met a lot of good people. A lot of good things happened, and it was because of other people in my life. And some of you may be looking back on that year and thinking, yeah, I got married, or I met the love of my life, or I did something, I formed a partnership, I formed a company, so that you're already seeing the fruits, really, of Jupiter's journey through that 7th house. Now, the 8th house has a layer of meaning of relationships in it as well, but it's not exactly, who you meet and what other people do for you in the way of finance or growth or happiness, joy, love, emotion, whatever it is. But it is about your relationships in the sense of what other people are doing to foster the relationship. Whether you're thinking about a financial relationship or an intimate relationship, what are other people doing to foster that relationship? That's something that you need to look at and play around with, because really and truly, when we look at Jupiter and that principle of expansion, of growth, of sort of bigger and better, we get the idea that people will want to invest in you, and that people will be happy to give you money and good things in life. Maybe you'll come into money. All sorts of good things can happen financially, emotionally to you while Jupiter is moving through the 8th house. But I think we need to look at the deeper meaning here. And the 8th house opposition the 2nd house, which is about what you offer the world and what you have control of, in the sense of earning money, of doing things for other people, fostering a relationship yourself. This swings to the opposite side now. And the focus is very much on, what are you getting back? What are you getting for your efforts? And hopefully with Jupiter here, it means you're experiencing abundance, and you feel that the partnerships that you're in, whether they're business, financial, or romantic, you are getting an awful lot out of being in that partnership. But let me say, if what you're looking at is quite the reverse, and you're looking at Jupiter in its role as the authoritarian, the narcissist, the power being in the other person's hands, then you could feel as though you are battling an organization or a person who does not think of you, but only of themselves. So that needs addressing. And I know that I talked about this to Libra, because Jupiter will be in the 10th house for Libra, and coming across authoritarian figures. that really you have to stand up to them. You can't, avoid them, because that's to just push the problem further along the line. And it's not the same with Jupiter in the eighth house, but there is a sense that you do have to not let organizations or individuals push you around, especially where money is involved. What you have to do is to make your point, stand up for what you earn, need, the efforts that you put in to a relationship or to an enterprise or to a job, whatever it may be, that you expect to be rewarded by whoever you're in business with, whoever you're in partnership with, whoever you're employed by. Now, that is going to be a bit of a theme, getting what you deserve. Again, we can just look at the cosmos just providing things. It may be that you, as I said, you do come into money, or that suddenly you either get into a new relationship where the other person is giving to you and the doors of intimacy are open and you're feeling so fulfilled because of this person. Or in terms of finance, this company or this group, whatever it may be. And that's something that just happens because Jupiter is moving through this area. And that's all well and good. And if that happens, then you experience it and benefit from it. But what I aim to do when I do these all sign interpretations is to get you to be aware of what's going on and to make sure that you make the most of the good things that are happening in terms of the astrology. And this is one of them. And if I say to you that around this time, because remember, Jupiter will be squaring Saturn and Neptune, if you lose something, let's say you lose a job, you lose a purchase, like a house purchase, or you lose a partner, a relationship goes belly up, it's because something better is coming. And I know that's often not much cheer when you're feeling that you've lost the thing you wanted more than anything. But when you look at this dynamic with Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at the promise of something better, bigger, coming through disappointment or loss. Okay, just bear that in mind in the near future, not necessarily the whole way through this 12-month period. Capricorn. Jupiter will be entering your seventh house, the area of relationships. Now, this is one of the best places for Jupiter to be in. If you're born with Jupiter in the seventh house, it's a really good sign that you're going to have good relations with people, and other people will be of great benefit to you in life. And it does say you should have great relationships. It doesn't always mean that, because sometimes you can get hitched to a narcissist. And Jupiter is the narcissist, and in the seventh house, that's what you can get. But you can also get somebody who is absolutely wonderful, a kind of guru figure, a mentor, someone who is absolutely amazing, who either you meet in life and has such a powerful impact on you, it's life-changing, or you fall in love with them and marry them, and life changes because of that. It is going to be a good period for forming partnerships of any kind, whether it's business partnerships, whether it's coming together with people as a cooperative even, or whether it's doing something with your significant other, or getting married, or moving in with somebody, whatever it is. The word partnership, the word relationship is where Jupiter is beaming all its wonderful blessings. And it's a good time to get married. So even if you've been living with someone for a long time and you think, well, if we get married, will we change the dynamic? So maybe we should just keep things as they are. But really and truly, if Jupiter is here, this is the time you want to put a ring on it. And if you're listening to me, Capricorn, and you're single and there is nothing else you would like more in the world than a partner, then you've got Jupiter in the right place. And what you need to do is get out there. And time and again, when I'm dealing with my clients who may be seeking to find love, the dispiriting experiences of online dating are, well, they're really dispiriting. And you need to get out there. You need to be seen. You need to mix and mingle. And that's where you will find somebody. Also, people to invest in you. Maybe you have a creative endeavor, or you want to start a company, or your existing business requires somebody to come and invest in it. Well, you've got a really, really good opportunity with Jupiter here. Negatives about Jupiter here are also infidelity. Now, this can work two ways. It can turn you into somebody who is looking outside a relationship for that excitement, that sense of conquering, and all the heady stuff that goes on in the early stages of a relationship. So this is your call. And I'm talking to you now, and right now you're not thinking about it. It's not even crossed your mind. But if it does, think about what will happen in the wake of this, because often by following this course of action with Jupiter here, you will end up in a very expensive divorce. Okay, the two things go together. On the other hand, it may be the partner who is more liable to stray, in which case people look outside their marriage or their relationship for something that they haven't got in it. So this is a really good time to really nurture a partner and to really consider, how to make your partnership work better. So you nourish the relationship. That's a really good word when we think about Cancer and we think about this nurturing, mothering sign. This is an opportunity to mother the relationship. So looking at where Saturn and Neptune are, and the entry of Jupiter into Cancer, when it will be squaring both Saturn and Neptune, there are two ways to look at this experience or this aspect, especially if you're a December Capricorn, or you've got planets and points between 1, 3, and 4, maybe, of Capricorn, Cancer, Libra, and Aries, is that we get a Saturn-Neptune combo, and it's like the realization of one's dreams, but it's also the breaking of a dream, the dissolution of a dream. We're playing with the two opposites here. So you've got a scenario here whereby, this is either a dream come true with Jupiter, and you found backing, you have found somebody, you are doing something, and it does feel like, everything's, wonderful it could be, as it could be. But on the other hand, the idea of broken dreams, it may be that at this point, somebody deeply disappoints you, whether that's someone you hoped would invest in you or be with you, has clearly shown that they're not up to the job. And it may be the loss of a relationship or the loss of backing that you're experiencing. But of course, during the time Jupiter will be moving through the 7th house, you will find new backing and new support, a new person. And that's the reason that this particular relationship has gone by the wayside. Okay, but all good things, Capricorn, with Jupiter in the 7th. Believe in other people. Okay, good things can happen to you, Capricorn. Aquarius. Whenever I start with Aquarius, I think of Pluto being in your sign. And I think, how transformational it is if you've got planets and points in early Aquarius, or you're born in January. This has been a hugely, big and transformational period of your life, especially with relationships or in terms of your life course. And now we've got Jupiter changing signs, and this too is throwing a kind of whole new area of your horoscope into prominence, and in a good way, I have to say. And Jupiter is going to be moving through the 6th house of your solar chart. If you have Aquarius rising, or you are a Sun Aquarius, looking at your solar chart from the perspective of the Sun. And this area of the horoscope is what I call the engine of the horoscope. And why would I call it the engine? Well, it's, what do engines do? They keep things going. If you've got a car, if the engine isn't working, you've stopped. It's not functioning. And so the engine of the horoscope is where, money is earned, the routine day, the structures of life, the things that go on to make life run is where the 6th house is. So is what the 6th house is and what the 6th house is telling you. So if you've got Jupiter coming to this area, suddenly your life is going to get bigger. Now, why is it going to get bigger? It may get bigger because you've got a more responsible job, or you're traveling more with your job. Or is it getting bigger because you're added to the family? So there are more people, to support, to be responsible for. Is it that, you are working extensively to be fitter, stronger, better, healthier, with the result that you've got all sorts of new activities and possibilities in your life which make your life bigger and better? All these things are possible with Jupiter in the 6th house. And one of the antidotes, if you like, to this Pluto transformational endings, beginnings, that whole very powerful kind of message that Pluto brings, is the idea that what you do in your personal life in terms of being match fit for it on every level is really important. So psychologically, physically, mentally, this expansion here of consciousness, you might even think of it in this way, is going to really help you with all the other challenges that may come from other areas of your life. It could say, just Jupiter in the 6th house, you can look forward to a 12-month period of robust health. But it can also say, if you've got a condition or a problem, then it's likely to escalate. But in saying that, by getting it attended to, you will be fitter and better in the aftermath. So whichever way you look at it, Jupiter is a good guy in bringing issues to the surface, raising them, making them bigger in order to make them better, is quite a theme of Jupiter in this area. Yeah, maybe again, you'll have so much work on your hands that if you've been complaining about not enough work or not earning enough money, suddenly your cup is overflowing and you can't move for jobs and for people wanting your services. And that word service, very important. The 6th house is also the area of service, and we get that linked to the idea of life purpose, because if there is purpose in life, it is in leaving your mark, it is in doing something for humanity or doing something for other people, is where we find our life purpose. And with Jupiter going through this area, it may indeed be the case that you find yourself doing what you were meant to do, and your life purpose becomes something that is obvious to you. And that's also something to look forward to with Jupiter in this area. Pisces. Pisces, you have got rid of Saturn, you have got rid of Neptune, at least temporarily. They will slip back a little later on in the year, but not for very long. But now you have Jupiter in your fellow water signs. So there are benefits to come. This area of your solar chart, if you've got Pisces rising, or you are a Sun Pisces and looking at this from the perspective of your sun sign, Jupiter in the 5th house is about creativity. If there's just one word, we look at creativity. Now, that can be expressed in so many ways. Play is creative when we're playing. we're being creative. And this is the area of the inner child. So Jupiter is bringing out your inner child. And if your inner child hasn't had a lot of fun, and therefore it's a little bit cranky, then Jupiter is going to do its best to please your inner child so that you can find joy and happiness. And that is a real possibility while Jupiter transits the fifth house. When we also look at creativity, we think about enterprise, business, jobs, things like that, demand creative effort. We think of the expansion of that. So we think about success in your creative endeavors. If you're an artist, finding creative satisfaction, finding success for your work, Jupiter in the fifth house. Business, enterprise, success from the things you bring into being innovatively. What am I playing with this word for? Innovation, I was trying to say. But it's about something that is coming from you to bring out and offer to other people. We also get the idea of pro-creativity. So if Jupiter is in your fifth house, it does raise the prospect of starting a family, adding to your family, becoming pregnant. And so that too may be welcome to your ears, the idea of growing your family. Another aspect to the fifth house is romance. It is about sex. It is about finding another with whom you experience joy and creativity. See how all this fits together? And we're looking at the houses. This is also the house of the little self. Remember, I've talked about the inner child. It's also the little self. So if we look at Jupiter in its negative aspect, then we would be looking at getting too big for your boots, you becoming a little bit of a narcissist, wanting everything your way, wanting to be the star, wanting to be the prince or princess. And it's great to be the prince or the princess for a day, but it can't become a way of life, because that way is an abuse of the creative Jupiter principle in the fifth house. You want to enjoy that sense of being in the spotlight, of being the star, but not to then add to that in the sense of being too much and too self-absorbed and too personally demanding. There's also this sense of risk-taking that goes with the fifth house. And I think there's a certain amount to be said for Jupiter transiting this area, offering you opportunities that carry a certain risk. Now, I'm not going to tell you to take a risk with life, limb, and your bank account, as I often say. But I think sometimes you need to be able to recognize that, that other cliche, no risk, no reward. And while Jupiter is in the fifth house, you need to take a few more risks. And when opportunities come up, whenever Jupiter is connecting with your natal chart or whatever it may be doing in transit, that's the time the boat of opportunity might swing by, and you want to get on board. You don't want to be overthinking it or, thinking I don't deserve this, or, is this the right time? No, if it's there, if it's in front of you, go get it. And also coming back to the idea of romance, this is not necessarily where you find marriage, where you find your life partner, the fifth house, but it is where you meet people with whom you can have a light-hearted love affair. And of course, sometimes what grows out of a light-hearted love affair is a long-term relationship, but it's going to start out as being light-hearted. And I would recommend that you have that light touch with romance. Let's see if it goes anywhere, but if it doesn't matter. It's just for the moment. It's a bit like living in the moment. And I think maybe that's also the key to Jupiter in the fifth house, is living in the moment. And I think I'm going to leave that there, Pisces. Aries. Now, Jupiter has come to an incredibly important position in your solar chart, or if you've got Aries rising and Jupiter is now in the fourth house. The fourth house is the ending and the beginning of the chart. So, in a way, as Jupiter moves through Cancer and then on through Leo, Virgo, Libra, it's beginning its 6-year climb to the top of your chart. So you're in a 6-year period of growth, and it's just beginning now. But that doesn't mean that you won't get some benefits from Jupiter right now. You may well do so. The fourth house, the roots of life. So we're seeing benefits in terms of the family, whether that means, there are additions to the family, babies, grandchildren, whatever, or by marriage, new partners coming into the family. We could be looking at better relations with the family. So if there have been difficulties and estrangements, then it's almost like Jupiter says, come on, let's get over that. Let's remember we're a family. And so Jupiter breathes kind of goodwill into family life. We can also look at it in a very kind of literal, realistic way, and think about your 4 square walls, that you'll be expanding your 4 square walls. And that can mean, yes, you're going to add a balcony, an extension to your house, or you're going to add furniture, paint, decorate, or you're going to move to a bigger and better home. And remember, we've got a whole year for this to become a reality. And even if none of those things are applicable to you, and you're not moving, you don't find a bigger and better home, you're not extending that, you're doing none of that, it is very good to make conscious Jupiter in the fourth house and say, I want to feel good about where I live. I want to feel really good. And you want your home to be a sanctuary, and you want to feel good in your home. And if people come into it, you want to feel good. So anything you can do to make your home look better, be a better environment for you to live in, is really feeding this Jupiter principle. I mean, if we feel happy in our home, we're probably happy in ourselves. If we've started to feel we don't like our home, or there's something wrong with it, or something, then that's saying something about us. And often the way to fix it is externally, and that sends messages internally. Sometimes very difficult to fix what's going on in ourselves. It's easier to do something with a paintbrush or with a clear up, or whatever else. We get the outside looking okay, we can then see that the inside will follow. And it is important for us to feel our home as a sanctuary. It is good for us to feel that we have people in our family, or people in our tribe, let's put it that way, who give us that sense of always being there for us, family first kind of thing. Jupiter fosters that feeling. And there may be a big celebration to come in the next 12 months on the home front, whether that's a wedding, whether it's a special anniversary, whether it's a birthday, whatever it is, it's a good thing. And also you can get money from your home, whether that means you sell it and make money if you own it, or whether it means a family business, or working from home. These are all ways to look at the benefits of home allied with Jupiter in that area of the horoscope. Is there a danger with Jupiter here? Always. You can have too much of a good thing. You may decide you want to do too much in the home, and you overextend yourself financially. You may find that you've bitten off more than you can chew with your mortgage. There may be too many of the family now, and it's difficult to find that level of connection with everybody. It might be difficult. So there's always areas in which Jupiter can be a right nuisance, when it comes to being in a certain place. But something, Aries, I think it's time that you got that sense of being supported and life beaming back at you good things. And I think that's something that Jupiter will give you while it goes through this area of the horoscope. As for this early June period, when Jupiter enters Cancer, and it's going to square Saturn and Neptune in your sign, if you're a March birthday, or you have planets and points between 1 and let's say 4 of Aries, Libra, Capricorn, and Cancer, this could be a time of great things happening. You could be saying, wow, I never thought this could happen to me. It's overwhelming. It's so wonderful. But it could be the reverse as well. And the rug could get pulled from underneath you, and something could be lost, or something could be so difficult. But you know what? When you look at that arrangement, Jupiter with Saturn and Neptune, think of that image of the Berlin Wall coming down. What did it give rise to? All sorts of big changes. And you want to look at that in your life. You may not be able to see the benefits that are to come, but because Jupiter, in its role as your great protector, there are good things coming from whatever happens that appears to be a negative at this time. Remember, good things are going to come out of this. Okay, Aries? Taurus. Jupiter is entering your 3rd house. Now, I'm going to start by thinking about its journey over the last 2 years. First of all, in your sign, then in the area of self-worth. It's been building. There have been opportunities, there have been things that have happened to you that may have started off a particular course of action, or you may have sensed in yourself that you've been building towards something. So there have been efforts financially, efforts to establish yourself, efforts to make the most of the opportunities that have come to you. So here you are, Jupiter is now entering the 3rd house, and the 3rd house is about your outlook. All this has happened now. Where has it all led to? What now you're looking at what's going on. Are you happy with everything that you've achieved? Are you happy about the things you've invested in, you've purchased, the efforts you've made to grow as a person? You've reached this point where you're now going to think about it. You know, is this benefiting me? Is all of this, you know, what I wanted, or is it giving me what I thought I wanted? Now, the 3rd house is a Mercury ruled house. So it is about communication. It's about trade. It's about travel. So you could say, just looking at it, you know, on the surface, oh, you're going to travel more. You're going to be doing lots of journeys all the time. Well, maybe you will, maybe you won't. But it's also about dialogue and exchange of information. It's about learning, the acquisition of knowledge. So this next year could be spent accidentally learning things through your experience, or it could be deliberately learning things because you're going to college, or you're going to take a course, or you're going to add to your skills, all of which I would highly recommend. I mean, the more you know, the better, or the more opportunities there are for you. Knowledge is power. And maybe that is the one thing to take away. If you wanted to turn off the video now and not do anything more, just take away those words. Knowledge is power. And that's the message coming loud and clear through Jupiter in this area of the horoscope. I think too, it is about, when we think of the digital age that we're in and the importance of social media and our social connections, our connections in our neighborhood, you know, which is also, when we think about, the 1st house is about us, who we are, our personality and our appearance, what we present to the world. The 2nd house is about what supports all that. What are we doing to foster it, to grow things, to acquire funds, to support our aims and ambitions? The 3rd house, it's all about stretching that out and thinking, you know, I've been so self-oriented. Now I want to take it out and find out a little bit more about my neighborhood, more about my siblings, because the 3rd house is about siblings as well. I want to look at what's going on in my small world and what's going on in my community. So all of these things, Jupiter will expand it, and you may find that you're doing things for your community. Maybe there's going to be a special celebration, and the town or the village or the city, who knows? You're going to get involved. You may get more politically involved. You may become quite an activist with Jupiter here, because what's being evoked is your sense of justice. Remember, Jupiter is a planet of justice. So if you sense injustice, you'll want to get behind it, and Jupiter will, forge that. And we also think about justice in the sense of having things going on in your life that you need to go to court for. Whether you feel your neighbors are encroaching on your territory and you're going to take them to court because you want your territory back, or whether you've got some upset with your siblings, or there's something else going on. Maybe you've got a parking ticket and you want to defend it. Jupiter in the third house is about using the law to defend your patch, your reputation, everything that you've built up. So that's in there as well. And this idea of getting a new outlook, I think it is important when we look out of the windows in our home or in our office or wherever we may be, that the view out there is something we like. Well, if we don't like the view we're looking at, it needs changing. Now, I know you can't necessarily go out and chop a tree down, but it's really the metaphor here that counts. If you don't like what you're looking at, change it. Change your perspective, change your view. And if you consistently do that with Jupiter, you will have a very, very successful 12 months. You will shift your position, change your outlook, change your perspective, and things will look very different, and you'll get better outcomes. And I think I'm going to leave that there, because that's rather a positive thought attached to Jupiter going through your third house. Gemini, you have had the benefit of Jupiter in your sign these last 12 months. And maybe you're listening to me and saying, well, didn't notice anything good happening to me. Well, there must have been at least one day when Jupiter was somewhere in your chart, on your natal chart, and you got a reward. Something made you terribly happy. You felt really successful about something. Jupiter isn't in your sign for nothing. And so at some point, what it did, the events that happened during that time, there were good seeds sown at that particular period of time. So it may be that now you're going to see the results of things that you ignored or didn't think were terribly important in the last year. You're going to see how important they really are. And I think with Jupiter in the second house, which is about self-worth, it's about what you're earning. It's about how you make your money. And if you think about the seeds that you may have planted while Jupiter was going through your first house, through Gemini, it may be that you're going to achieve the results. You're going to see the results of your efforts as Jupiter goes through the second house. Maybe your income will rise. You may think of new ways to create more money. You may be able to make money go further. Even if there's no more money coming in, you'll make money go further. And I think the other big theme about Jupiter in your second house is about investing in yourself and investing in your talents and in the things that you believe in. And, Jupiter's going to go through the whole horoscope over a period of 12 years. So it's fairly distributed, well distributed in terms of other people and other parts of life. But while it's in this area, it's about you. It's about what you have to offer the world, what you believe in yourself. So it is about boosting those things. Now, often when we talk about believing in ourselves and in, self-affirming, it's kind of crosses a line, doesn't it? And we think, well, isn't that straying into an area where we're being self-absorbed or only thinking of ourselves, selfish. But it's not the same. Having belief in ourselves means that we have that sense that we can do things, that our offerings are full of worth, that we are secure within ourselves. I mean, we find security and stability in the second house, which is why we think of, property attached to the second house. Often we might make an investment in a property. We might make more money. And we think of that in terms of giving us security and stability. But we can also, and in fact, it's more important to find that stability and security within ourselves. And part of that is through not chopping and changing all the time, but by really following something through. I mean, I know you don't want to throw good money after bad, especially when Jupiter is in the second house. But unless you give something a chance, it won't work. So there's a lot to be said for doing things in a rather pedestrian or, kind of, a way where it does seem as though you're just putting the building blocks in and nothing much is happening. But when you do this with Jupiter in the second house, you get good results. So be patient. And when it comes to self-affirmation, Rome wasn't built in a day. So, you take heart from, or you see things that you've achieved or you've done, or you recognize in yourself as being full of value. And you really focus on those things because you know that that thing is full of value and that you are full of value, and it grows from there. And when we're confident about ourselves, confident that we can do something to affect our future, then we can affect our future. It's when we get into a little puddle of, I can't do anything about this, it's the government, it's, whatever it is that isn't providing what we need. That is a very negative space to get into. And what we really need to do is to say, how can I empower myself? And Jupiter is about empowerment. So it is about powering your own resources. That's what it's about. It's about getting Jupiter manifesting what you have to manifest. And it can be done. And sometimes when we get to that point and we think we've done everything we have, then another gear comes in and we do find there's more we can do. There's more we can get out of it. So it's potentially a very good 12 months in the sense of getting results from what you put into life. And that may be to do with what you've done while Jupiter has been in Gemini, or it may be what you're doing right now, whether that is directly related to making money, whether it's directly related to building your reputation, to building something up in your life, or whether it is this all-important sense of realizing you are a person of value. You are your own assets, and it's the investment in yourself that you need to make right now. And just before I leave you, the connection to Neptune and Saturn, which it will make as it makes its entry into Cancer. This is interesting because it has to do with enterprise and collaborations. And it's either saying you need to have more input in the collaborations that you form or you get involved with, or it may say that something now shows you very clearly that that collaboration isn't worth your efforts. Either way, what comes after that is going to improve the situation. That is what Jupiter's mission is. It is to improve your stability, security, your work, your income, your sense of self, all of these things during the course of the next 12 months. Okay, Gemini? So having gone through all 12 signs around the world in 80 days, around the chart in an hour or whatever it is, I mean, Jupiter is such an upbeat planet. I love talking about Jupiter. I love seeing Jupiter, if it's, prominent in a chart, because a lot of good things happen with Jupiter. Although, as I said at the beginning of this, can inflate and escalate, and we can't rule that out. We have to think about that too. But by and large, if we're feeling optimistic, if we're seeing the best in people and situations, we're generally happier. And I think just Jupiter as a principle, wherever it is in our charts, if we can really tune in to that Jupiter and think this is our sense of well-being, this is our sense of it's all going to be all right on the night, or it's all going to be right once we come through the other side of it. It's so important that we have that feeling. And that's what Jupiter can give us temporarily, but it's also a principle we can manifest and think about, maybe in meditation, or just in simply quiet moments when we have one to ourselves. Now, one of the things I was thinking about, with a view to how I was going to end this particular video, and it was coming back to the idea of what we're going through at the moment. We are living in accelerated times. I mean, there's never been a time like this. Well, there has never been a time like this, but what I mean in the sense of events happening one after another, and the potential of these events to really change the world in such dramatic ways. And so all of us are kind of feeling that, and some of us are having things in our own lives that are like, kind of storm, that we're dealing with. And it made me think about the age of Aquarius and about, Pluto's early, moving through these very early degrees of Aquarius, which is what this is all about. Whatever pieces of the puzzle we're putting into it, whether it's the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, Jupiter in Cancer, shortly Uranus into Gemini, whatever the little pieces are, the bigger picture is this idea of Pluto in Aquarius. And I was thinking, it is really the labor pains of this new age. We are going through the labor pains. And it's an indeterminate amount of time before the baby is born, before the age of Aquarius is launched. And this is certainly why we're experiencing so much turmoil in the world. And I think, looked at that, we could see that it's purposeful. We may not like what's going on in the world. And I read an extraordinary statistic this morning before I did this. And this, by the way, is Sunday. It's Sunday, the 1st of June, I'm recording this. And it was something like there's 121 armed conflicts going on in the world right now. And I mean, all I can think of really myself is Gaza, Ukraine, Russia, Sudan, Yemen. These are the names that trip off my tongue. I think altogether 121. So even if this is a period in which we have, we're hearing a lot of people talking about this wonderful divine consciousness, this portal that we're all going through, it's all going to be absolutely beautiful. I think we're a long way from that. But that doesn't mean that individually we can't change our consciousness and our awareness. If we use the word awareness instead of consciousness, I think we get a lot, it's more workable with. When we change our awareness of something, we think of things in a different way, we look at things from a different perspective, we are in a way expanding our consciousness. And I think if we're doing that, and there's no reason to think that if we can do it, so too can leaders in different countries, eventually this will be the way through all these conflicts that we can bring to an end. But yes, that was sort of on my mind, this idea of the turmoil we're going through as labor pains, which is helpful because a baby will come out the other side. We will eventually be in the age of Aquarius. But also this idea of a change in awareness. Individually, we all do it. And when we do it for one, we do it for all. Okay. Thank you for being with me. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.